Chapter 7, Finding My True Purpose and Calling. The biggest threat to our well-being is the absence of moral clarity and purpose. Rich Sherman. Have you ever thought about who you are, what you stand for, why you were born? I'm not talking about your family roles or work roles. You can be a friend, a brother, sister, employee, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, partner, mother, father, son, or daughter, all the same time. But these are just very small pieces of who you are. They don't represent who you are deep inside. Your inner self is who you really are on the inside. I had to have this chapter in this book because beyond the tears is your true calling. Beyond the tears is your true joy. And only you can claim it. To know your inner self is to know your purpose, your values, your visions, your motivations, your goals, and your beliefs. This is not what others have told you or what others have discovered in you, but what you have discovered in yourself. I noticed that when I was in school, finding who I was and discovering my purpose were never part of the curricula I studied in all the years of schooling that I attended. Yet this is a major part of life. Knowing what I was created for and how to tap into my own self-knowledge would have helped me with the degree choices I had to make. Knowing your inner self requires a high level of self-examination and keen self-awareness. As Socrates famously said, the unexamined life is not worth living. I realized the importance of being free of any past stress, hurts, resentments, anger, or frustrations when discovering who you really are. At the same time, the process of discovery never ends. It's a long life journey. Knowing your inner self comes from self-awareness. As I mentioned, knowing your inner self comes from truly knowing yourself, which is what I call self-awareness. Even if you do not have a clear picture of who you really are, it is important to take a look at your life and to see your responsibility for what has happened in your life. Every day is a journey in discovering who I am and what I stand for. The more I uncover about myself, the more I am able to live and to do what I love. I have realized that before everything else, I'm Stembile, Stem, as I am now affectionately known, or Tembi, as I was known by my grandparents. Stembile means hope, or to be hopeful in my native language. I always say I'm more than my identities. I laugh because I've been told many a time that it is difficult for guys to date me because of my education and my professional accomplishments, when in truth, all I'm thinking is, well, I'm more than all those accomplishments. It is a shame that people are discriminated against for having been diligent and persistent in preparing themselves educationally. I admit it. There have been times when I was very confused about what my life's purpose was and about who I was. I have said in a previous chapter that my journey started in a nursing home where Miss Mary was the angel who told me that I was a social worker. Before she told me that, I had been struggling to imagine what kind of life I would have been working with computers because I was pursuing a computer science degree at the time. I could not envision what my life would be like. Deep down, I knew that computers were not my passion. I did not enjoy sitting at a machine for hours on end. I imagined, however, that somehow I'll be paid more money that way, and the money would enable me to do what I wanted with my life. It is surprising thinking back that the discovery of who you are and what you really enjoy doing has never been a priority, at least not anywhere I've been. I've heard people complaining about their education, their work, their life, and their families, but have never heard a conversation that focuses on what it is that you're here on this earth for. Two simple questions that have helped me and which continue to help me are: What do you do for a living? What were you born to do? What you do for a living is the safe option. That is the job that you do to pay the bills, to care for the family, and to provide for what we call your day-to-day needs. It's comfortable. It's what you know, and it's what you've done for years. Perhaps most significantly, it can't be all that horrible because you're still doing it as you read this book. What you are born to do is for many people the frightening option. It also requires us to shift away from what we know. It's uncertain whether you'll get the money you need to survive or whether you'll be successful. This is, however, what you enjoy doing the most. This is what would give you sleepless nights because it doesn't even feel like work at all. This is what inspired that anonymous quote: "Choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life." For most of us, the fear is, what if it doesn't work out? You'll have left your day job, your security, for a dream that many will call silly. The scary part is, then what? Do you go crawling back to reality, shamefully admitting that your dream or your business idea or your pride and joy failed? Many people hate the feeling of failure. They hate being talked about if it doesn't work, and they fear having wasted precious time going after this dream job or dream business. This uncertainty, this fear of the unknown, scares many people to the point of never even trying to pursue their God-given talents. Many don't take action because they don't want to fail at whatever they love to do. I had to overcome this fear. I had to believe Miss Mary and arrange to go through a social work program where my true, authentic self would shine at Boston University in Massachusetts. I felt though that continuing with my degree in computer science and not changing to what I loved would be much worse. Staying as a nurse's aide in the nursing home meant doing only what I had to do to pay the bills. My inner spirit knew that I wanted to help people in a much larger capacity than as a social worker in the nursing home. I could foresee myself becoming increasingly unhappy if I didn't pursue something I loved. Many people stay in unhappy positions, unhappy marriages, unhappy relationships, and then blame other people for their unhappiness. We all have an obligation to ourselves first. We owe it to ourselves to take responsibility for what we want to do and what we have to do. But wait, is it that easy? Unfortunately, it is not that easy for many. As human beings, we are influenced by other people a lot more than we usually acknowledge. When one is sad and in need of a friend or a parent's advice, the influence is good. But there are many times when what has happened in the past puts restraints on our current relationships, which can make it difficult for some to find their true calling. I recently read a book by Dr. Phil C. McGraw called Self Matters: Creating Your Life from the Inside Out. In it, Dr. Phil discusses how the choices we make on a day-to-day basis help to promote happiness and to define our purpose. I couldn't agree more. It's a very good, very detailed book as far as self-help books go, and I want to share a few statements that in particular really spoke to me on the subject of choices. Dr. Phil wrote, "I have some bad news and I have some good news. The bad news is you're making the choices that have put you on this life circumstance. The good news is you're making the choices that have put you in these life circumstances." Dr. Phil also includes a section on how our past shapes us and affects who we are and who we will become. He writes, "Social scientists tell us that the entire origin of your self-concept and therefore determination of who you ultimately become in your life can be traced to the events of a precious few days and the actions of an amazingly few key people involved in those happenings." He goes on to say that out of the thousands of people you have met in your entire life, and despite all the good and bad things that have happened to you, The basis of who you are can be found rooted in only 3 things, which Dr. Phil describes as 10 defining moments, 7 critical choices, and 5 pivotal people. Leaving the nursing home and going to Boston University was the only beginning of my journey. I remember writing the entrance application essay with incredible passion and excitement. In the essay, I spoke of how much I love people. I love working with humans in every capacity, and especially in times of distress. My goal is to create, as Oprah Winfrey put it, an aha moment for myself and for those whom I serve and encounter. I feel more satisfied when I encounter such a moment of enlightenment, a moment of increased courage, increased willpower, increased enthusiasm about life, and a greater willingness to let that little light shine. I create this environment for my audience and for myself. My purpose is to be a messenger of hope and peace. God is my employer, and my passion is to serve Him to the end. I have realized that in everything I have done, putting Him first has been the best decision of all. When I do what I do knowing that I'm serving Him, I rid myself of the stress caused by critics and negative people. Whether you've already found whatever it is that you were born to do, or are just starting to take steps on the path towards embracing your true calling, my advice is to be grateful for life. I worked as a social worker in a hospital where I saw people who endured serious heart problems. Some of them lost their lives, dying prematurely at an age that should have been one of the physically strongest phases in their lives. I also worked in hospice care where I was privileged to speak with and administer to people in the last days of their lives. Being alive is a privilege. And when we learn to acknowledge the gift of life and aim to make the most of each day, we will no doubt find our true calling. It is of no use to simply know that you are unhappy with what you're doing. You must also be willing to find an alternative. If you don't know one or don't care enough to find out some other solution, you will remain stuck, doing the same old thing day in and day out. I understand that sometimes we have to stick it out to what we're able to do because we don't have the right papers. That is how it was for me at one point. What I don't understand are those who pray about getting papers or who complain about their inability to obtain the right work papers and who then fail to work at finding some other solution. Everything in life has the potential to erect a roadblock that either requires you to think outside of the box or that forces you to act in a way that is different from the norm. When the situation hurts us long and deep enough, we do whatever is necessary to get what we need. Ask yourself, what is it that you need in order to be able to pursue your true calling? What can you do about it? Who can you talk to about it? Who can you pray with about it? Now act on this information. Do whatever it is that you have to do. There's always a little voice within each of us. A voice that keeps nagging us, keeps ringing in our ears, and keeps us unhappy by making us uncomfortable in any situation. The situation could involve almost anything: cooking, painting, starting a business, writing, going back to school, working to improve a relationship. Suddenly, we realize the source of our sadness, anger, and dissatisfaction with our lives. It comes from not finding fulfillment in the choices we have made or in what we're doing for a living. At Boston University, I realized that working with people was my calling. I worked as an intern at Women's Inc., where I worked with women who were recovering from addiction. I was changed by my experience with counseling them. Just as they changed as a result of my counseling. That is my calling. I enjoy coaching people and counseling people because as they heal, I'm healed as well. My work included working with adolescents, Now, looking back, I'm amazed at how my life path has so often involved working with women and youth. In finding your passion, as I have found mine, I want to make it clear that some people are clearly content and happy with working at their job and doing what they're doing. That is admirable. As long as you're happy and content with where you are, understand that the key to contentment is not the pay, but rather your ability to do what you do with passion and happiness. It is knowing beyond a shadow of doubt that the work you do is the best you can do and that you are happy with where you are. It is what you were born to do, and you do not have moments of wishing you were doing something else. Even though I worked for many different human service agencies, programs, hospitals over the years, I loved what I did. The pay was great. When you have found your passion, you sleep at night knowing my only issue with my job was that I wanted to impact more people. I wanted to travel. I wanted the freedom to teach, to speak, and to connect with many more people. I also wanted to work for myself and to have the freedom to do more with my time. I left the job after job for many new opportunities. I went to school to get further educated, but I still was not satisfied with working for anyone else. I love Florida, and when I finished my doctorate degree, I knew it was time to shift, to move into my true calling. I had to sacrifice the love I felt for Florida and to move back to Massachusetts so that I could work for myself and do what I love most: coaching, speaking, training, and traveling. It is what I was meant to do. I had to move on, in part because I did not want to be one of those people who look back at the end of their life and realize that they should have pursued their true calling. Instead, I listened to that inner voice and paid attention to the outer stress that said I wanted to work for myself. Unlike many who I suspect will regret not having taken chances I wanted to try, I would leap at the chance to work for myself and to help more people and allow God to do the rest. I, however, was afraid. I was afraid that I might be taking a big step backwards because I had left Boston 16 years before to seek a better life in Florida. My friends in Florida told me I wouldn't last long in the cold. They said I would soon give up and come back. But I didn't listen to them. I believed that I would last in the cold if I was doing the work that was meant for me. I have since learned that you cannot mess with a made-up mind. I was determined. I had made up my mind that I was going to move back to Massachusetts, and I was certain that I would find a way to make it. It wasn't easy. I was embarrassed to be moving back, and I was nervous at the thought of how I would even get started. But the thought of what if I succeed was stronger than my concerns, so I moved. What is this monster called fear? That we all talk about it when we discuss whether we should try pursuing our dreams, going after our heart's desires, or taking the risks that we need to take. What is it about fear that keeps many people captive, trapped by tears and pain, seemingly unable to move beyond the tears into a brighter future? It is truly scary how fear gets in the way of many of us moving ahead with our lives. We fear giving up our security, or we fear the failure that might result from pursuing our dreams. In some cases, we fear our own successes, or fear having to maintain that success over years or decades. We fear what people will say or what they will think. We worry that we might not have what it takes to do what we're driven to do, even when we have all the necessary qualifications and more. I talk about fear again because it is such a barrier to so many people. No matter how many books you've read, how much education you've received, or how you are ministered to, if you don't conquer your fears, you will not move ahead. If you never move ahead, you will not be able to find your true calling before your time on this earth is up. Think of a fly. It's such a little creature, but it's amazingly fearless and powerful. Fear is like the little fly. It can bite a big man or woman and leave them scratching and mourning from pain. We must recognize that we have the option of swatting the fly and stepping away, We cannot allow these fears and concerns to stop us from living our dream life. Any fearful excuse we can give for not doing something can be thought of as a small fly and swatted off. I noticed that for many years, whenever I was about to make a change in my life, even if it was simply from one job to another, similar job, I felt scared. Because of my fear, it took a long time for me to truly make up my mind. I had a secure job in Florida. I was content in some ways with where I was, but I wasn't truly content. To find my true calling, I had to move when I needed to move. I had to say, yes, Lord, and trust in Him. So at last, when I most needed to make a change and return to Massachusetts, my dream was bigger than my fears. As foreigners, we have a different mission than most, I think. We're survivors. So when we get a job that requires us to show up, put in some work, and get paid, we show up. We show up for the paycheck that allows us the freedom of money we did not have back home. The paycheck, the benefits, and the health insurance usually keep many people from moving. It is the security that comes from having this stability in our lives that usually keeps us from finding our true calling. I gave it all up and moved with just a couple suitcases in my car. 2 weeks after I arrived in Massachusetts, my car died. I had no job, no money to fix it. I found a part-time job that paid very little and worked to get enough money to buy another used car and to seek another better paying job. When you decide to pursue your passion, your calling, you will face many stumbling blocks along the way. There will be disappointments and setbacks. It will not be easy, but it is worth it. The answer is already within you. Your job is to face the fear that is trying to stop you and follow your passion anyway. If you haven't found the work you were meant to do, keep searching, keep praying, and be ready to act when you finally find what you want. It is so good to be doing what you love. I know this because after I moved to Massachusetts, I worked menial jobs here and there until I found a job that paid really well at a local hospice agency. The pay was more than I ever had been paid before, but my calling was far greater than the pay I was earning. So I saved that money and eventually used it to pay for an office with one of my angels, Helen Hawk, a licensed psychotherapist in private practice in Swampscott, Massachusetts. I paid a very minimal fee, as I had applied for provider privileges with many health insurance companies in Massachusetts. This process took hours and hours of writing. I remember my nieces Chantel and Charlene asking me why I never slept. I remember my sister Nikki and her boyfriend Teddy asking me why I had so much paperwork every day. I worked part-time on my dream and full-time on the job that paid the bills. My part-time work was my future, because once I succeeded in it, I'd be free to pursue my calling and my passion. The profits that owning a business would bring excited me as well. I was tired of living from paycheck to paycheck. I explained to my nieces that I was working so hard so that one day, whenever I opened my mailbox, every envelope inside would be a check from my patient's health insurance paying me for having counseled them. I told my nieces that I had spoken to Helen, who said she had been doing counseling in private practice for a long time, and the freedom to work when she wanted to was unsurpassed. I started imagining the checks in the mail instead of just bills. I started envisioning myself traveling, conducting seminars, and taking on speaking engagement. I was already seeing myself writing books and inspiring people through the books and through television and radio broadcasts. My mind was made up. I remember going through the snowstorms in tears. I did not have a boyfriend to help me shovel my car out of the snow, and most of the time my brother-in-laws were at work when I called them looking for help. So I rolled up my sleeves and dug myself out. As I shoveled snow in the wake of one of these storms, I realized that over the past months, I had been digging myself free of my old ways of thinking and living. I was freeing myself from old expectations, becoming more than I had thought I could ever be. At that moment, I knew I was going to make it no matter what. I was doing fulfilling work but needed to expand my territory. As one of my great mentors, Les Brown, says, if you take responsibility for yourself, you will develop a hunger to accomplish your dreams. When you're hungry, no one can stop you. The questions you should ask yourself as you read this chapter are these. Are you truly happy with where you are in life? Are you truly happy to work in a career that is fulfilling and enjoyable? Because when you really love your work, you greet the day with a smile that can brighten a whole room. They say you won't need a clock to wake you. You'll wake when you need to wake, all on your own because you love what you do. I have conducted training seminars and done speaking engagements where people have asked me if it's too late to make a change. Maybe you are one of those people and asking yourself whether it's too late for you. Maybe you believe that you've somehow missed your calling and now you're thinking that you should pursue it now. After all, you're not getting any younger. I believe the 19th century writer George Eliot got it right when she said, "You are never too old to be what you might have been." My first coach, Sasha Zerbeck, laughed when I told her that at the age of 45, I was too old to try something new. That was 2 years ago. She empowered me to pursue my speaking passion because she herself had started in her 50s, and she's doing very well and going steadily forward. When I left Zimbabwe, I believed, as many of my fellow Zimbabweans also believed, that my purpose was to be a good person, to set a good example, to get an education and get married. I was supposed to stay out of trouble, and then, at some arbitrary point in life, I was supposed to contribute to society. I didn't think that my purpose was to set goals and pursue them. I felt like my purpose was to take whatever life threw at me, wait for something good to happen to me, and then, after a lifetime of waiting, die. Obviously, I no longer believe those things. Instead, I now believe that we all can think and act on our own merits. We do not at any point in our lives have to settle for anything. We can choose to tolerate something until we can do better, or we can find better ways or alternative solutions. But even when we choose to wait, it is a choice. We're not waiting passively. We are waiting and watching for a chance to make ourselves and our situation better. My belief is that none of us have special birthmarks that allow for special privileges in fulfilling our life's calling. I believe that if we build enough faith and strength within us to go after what we need, then we are bound to get that and more. There will be hard work required of you along the way while you become the person you were meant to be. In the lessons I learned, I will share with you the steps I found to be helpful in uncovering my inner self. There are those who will say, well, my situation makes it harder to find my purpose or to be what I was meant to be. To many, it is difficult even to fathom having the passion to find out what they are meant to do on this earth. To them, I leave this quote from Richard Bach. Here is the test to find whether your mission on earth is finished. If you are alive, it isn't. Lessons learned. Here are some steps which I found to be useful in uncovering my inner self. Being open to continuously learning and growing as a person. Putting myself in fearful situations in order to get to where I want to go. Constant reflection on the lessons learned and looking within for inner strength. Looking beyond what I'm told in order to discover what I want for myself. Listening to my gut feeling when it arises. Assuring myself that I'm as good as those who have made it or better. Not blaming myself when I didn't make it. I knew I was doing my best. Believing that all things are possible to those who believe. being patient with myself when I didn't make it, celebrating each step I took towards my dream, no matter how big or small the step. The longer you put off following your heart, the harder it is to leave the supposed security of the place you're at. I learned that you have to move from where you are to get to where you want to be. As John A. Shedd said, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are for. Happiness is an individual matter. When you're able to bring relief or bring back the smile to one person, not only that person profits, but you also profit. The deepest happiness you can have comes from that capacity to help relieve the suffering of others. Nothing compels us except the joy of sharing peace, the joy of sharing freedom from our pain, freedom from our worries, freedom from craving, which are the true foundations of happiness. Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Buddhist teacher and author. Risk anything. Care no more for the opinion of others, for those voices. Do the hardest thing on earth for you. Act for yourself. Face the truth. Catherine Mansfield. They say with age comes wisdom. I'm a work in progress. I still make mistakes, and I still have doubts. But my continued passion for my dream is bigger than the fears. My refusal to be negative and my willingness to work on improving my actions and reactions have resulted in my becoming more and more in harmony as a person. Today, I'm at a place where my outward identities are well in line with who I am on the inside. While there's definitely still room for further alignment, my inner and outer selves are quite congruent with one another. And all this didn't happen by chance. It came about as a result of conscious effort. I now monitor what I say to myself and other people. I pay attention to how I handle different situations. I constantly have to tell myself that I don't have to be defensive when people ask me on why I always emphasize the importance of being positive as a catalyst to leading the life of your dreams. People have sometimes accused me of being too positive, but many are now seeing that I have been in Boston for 4 years without wishing for even a single day that I was back in Florida. I'm a survivor, not a quitter. And by believing that, yes, I can do it, I have made this life's transitions more bearable. A dose of motivation. As Oprah Winfrey once said, you are not the product of your circumstances. You are a composite of all things you believe and all the places you believe you can go. Your past does not define you. You can step out of your history and create a new day for yourself. Even if every single possible bad thing can happen to you does happen, you can keep going forward. I agree 100%. When you decide to create a life that is of your own choosing, you are certain to make certain changes despite the tears and pain. What makes you feel most alive? What's something you do that makes you feel like everything is right in the world? What gives you a feeling of satisfaction? When it comes to finding your true calling, set peace of mind as your highest goal and aim to do things that give you a feeling of total bliss.